SEBI's new fund classification system has brought in a whole lot of changes. Funds are getting merged or fundamental attributes are getting changed, causing a lot of anxiety and confusion amongst the investors. Please do not fret about it, because we are going to be addressing all these issues and tell you what you should be doing in today's Investors Hangout. This episode is brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research, and with me is the CEO of Value Research, Dhirendra Kumar. Dhirendra, welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to throw some light on this new fund classification system that SEBI has introduced? What is the objective of the whole thing?
The objective of this exercise is to standardize mutual funds. Today it was possible to have, today there was no standard classification system. 10 kind of equity fund possible now. That is what SEBI has stated. And all that I'm talking about is valid only for the classification system, is valid only for the open-end funds. So 10 kind of equity fund possible, and that is primarily based on the size of the company the fund will be investing in. So large cap, large and mid cap, multi-cap, a fund which will have all the flexibility to move anywhere. Dividend yield. So, dividend yield and focus are actually, one is the size based on the capitalization, the size of the company based on which there will be an investment mandate. So small cap, large cap, multi-cap, and large and mid cap. Then you have, the style category based on, the investing style. So you have the value fund. Then you have the focused fund where the fund will actually be taking a concentrated bet. So 10 kind of equity funds possible. There are a couple of, redundant category, not so useful category, because I still don't understand the rationale for the retirement goal-oriented things, because I think every mutual fund is goal-oriented. The goal, any investment which you have the goal in your mind, it's a goal-oriented. So if you are investing in a multi-cap fund with your retirement in mind, that's your retirement fund. But still, for legacy or for reasons that they continue to exist, maybe it has been provided for. 16 kind of fixed income fund. So there are way too many, but they're very well nicely articulated. So investors can really understand which is worthwhile, the kind of fund which they should have, the underlying risk. One thing which has come out very nicely, and 4 kind of hybrid possible. So the funds which invest in equity, debt, and or other asset classes together. And depending on the asset allocation, you have the aggressive hybrids, what we used to erstwhile call the balanced fund. They were not balanced, they were 70-75% equity. So those will be aggressive hybrids, the balanced fund, and the conservative ones, and the equity income category. So and then 16 kind of fixed income fund. Depending on the credit profile, depending on the liquidity, depending on the kind of interest rate risk which the fund will be taking, or the kind of view it will be taking, or the kind of portfolio it will be carrying. So 16 kind. So this is not a simplification exercise. I think it is actually a standardization exercise. With these definitions, investors will be sure of getting what they are buying into. The fund will continue to remain what it has stated to be.
And what about the investor? Do I need to worry about understanding all of them?
No, you don't need to understand. You need to really worry about if you have invested in a fund and that fund is changing color. Broadly, there are three, four kind of things that is likely to happen. One, the fund that you have invested in has merged with another one. In most cases where there is a merger happening, funds are merging up with a similar kind of fund, because one fund company has multiple kind of similar fund. So SEBI is forcing them to merge them together. So there you don't need to do much, except that you have to worry that if the fund after merger becomes too big, so it has lost its character. That is a call that you should take at a future date, but nothing fundamentally changes. There is another thing, there could be a cosmetic change. The fund that you invested in has changed its name, but nothing has changed underlying.
So
that is a cosmetic change. The third change could be, that the fund that you invested in is undergoing a radical change. You invested in a mid-cap fund, and that fund is going to become a multi-cap fund. That is still tolerable. But if a fund which was erstwhile a balanced fund and now it is going to become a balanced advantage fund, I think you should worry, because if you are expecting that this balanced fund is going to produce similar kind of equity kind of return, and it is not going to be protected, focused on downside protection, so that character is changing. That is where you might have to take a decision that do you still need the fund? Is it really qualifying for Is it really justifying, or is it violating one of the basic, rationale for you choosing that fund? If you choose a fund for a certain reason, and that reason doesn't exist, change in fundamental attributes, check it out. That might be, in some cases, it might be worthwhile to exit.
Okay, what about the assets under management if they become too big? Should I, as an investor, worry about it?
There are categories where there will be, funds will not be nimble, and that is an impediment. That is not going to help the fund performance, and that is actually this whole classification exercise is going to accelerate the whole phenomenon of winner's curse. Fund does well, gets more money, and after that it stops doing well. So with this consolidation, some funds will actually, without being a winner, they will turn big and they will lose their charm. So in some categories, being big is a disadvantage. In many categories, being big is not as much of a disadvantage. For example, the liquid funds or the debt funds, I don't think size is a problem. For large cap funds, it's not a problem. Maybe a multi-cap fund or a multi-cap fund can also lose out sometimes, because many a times multi-cap's ability to move into smaller caps and other things, if it is a 30,000 crore fund, even if you have 20% of it in small cap, moving 20% in small cap will be a big job, will be a big task, will be a very difficult thing for the fund manager. Okay. And so in that case, in some cases, small caps, mid caps, multi caps, being big will be a disadvantage.
Okay. So what I hear from you is that as an investor, if there is any fundamental attribute change, I should notice that. Yes. I should take care of that.
Yes. You should worry that, did you buy it for that reason in the first place?
Did you buy it? Okay. So fundamental attribute is changing. Please pay attention. Now let's come to the ratings. For example, for value research, will this affect the ratings of value research?
Yes, it will affect at two levels. One is that the ratings are based on the classification, and by and large, value research classification system has been, SEBI's classification system is very much in line with what value research classification system is. Not except, of course, debt fund will become much sharper. Also, we already had this system that whenever there is a change in fundamental attribute, we used to suspend the rating, and we used to treat it as a launch of a new fund. Okay. And so that will get triggered in many of the funds. Also, many of the funds, the history will become redundant. If a fund was a multi-cap fund, so those kind of big reclassification, if it is a nominal shift, if it is a shift of one level, for example, a mid-cap fund becoming a multi-cap fund, we might retain the rating. But if a mid-cap fund becomes a large-cap fund, or if a balanced fund becomes a balanced advantage fund, it's a significant change in the attributes of the fund. We will suspend the rating, and also the investor should also look at the past performance differently. Past performance will not be relevant, because the fund used to conduct differently in the past. Now it will be different. Now it has to conduct with the new rules.
So there's going to be a gap of 3 years.
Yes, because
in some cases.
Yes, where we will be looking at those funds, those big funds, old funds, which has where the fundamental attribute changes. We will be looking at them as a new fund, because it is almost like starting a fresh fund.
Correct. And are there going to be any tax implications if a fund is merged?
No, fortunately not. For all your older investment, there could be, in one instance, there could be an implication. I'll just explain it in greater detail. Yeah. One is that earlier there used to be a tax implication on a fund merger, because fund merger is effectively selling of an existing fund and buying of a new fund. Because when a fund merges, the swap ratio is that if a fund's NAV is 20 rupee and it is merging with a fund which has a NAV of 40 rupees, you will be allotted the new units. And tax fellows used to treat it as sale and purchase of a new fund. Okay. So purchase of a new fund, so you will be liable for the capital gains tax if it is from now on. So in case of fund merger, 2 years ago, the budget actually provided that fund merger, there will be no tax implication till you hold it. Now, if you are forced to sell a fund because there's a change in fundamental attribute and you don't like the fund, or if your merged fund, or the fund in which you invested is merging with another one and it will turn too big and you have decided not to exit that fund, every fund company is supposed to provide you a no exit load window.
Okay.
Even for because in most equity funds and debt funds, even in debt funds, you will have an exit load implication for your investment of less than 1 year. Investments of less than 1 year, you will get a no exit load window. For investments of less than 1 year, you will be liable for short-term capital gains tax.
Okay.
If you have any gains, but I really wonder that you will have, and all your older investments, gains till 31st January 2018 is tax sheltered because it was in the no capital gains tax regime, and I don't think any fund has any meaningful gains post that. So for your old long-term investments, there is absolutely no tax implication, even if you decide to if you want to clean your portfolio, reorganize it, sell, and have make a new selection. Older investment and relatively newer investment, and if you are sitting on gains of short-term capital gains, if you make those changes, you will be liable for the capital gains tax, and that is not by your choice.
Okay.
It has been thrust upon you.
So for the new fund classification system, if your fundamental is getting changed, then and only then you need to worry about. Is that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you need to pay attention if the purpose for which you purchased a fund, that fundamental value is getting changed, attribute is getting changed, then kindly pay attention to it and speak to your fund manager. We now move on to the Q&A section of our program, and the first question is from Sudhir, who writes in to say how relevant will be the past performance and the skills exhibited by the fund manager after the reclassification of a mutual fund scheme. What's your advice to a layman?
It is always relevant, it is, that's the key. The skill and the delivery in the past of a fund manager is all there to it. That is what you look at. And I don't think, this is a reclassification process which the funds are undergoing. It is not a big rejig in a sense that if a fund manager is managing a mid-cap fund, and he ends up managing a multi-cap fund. These are the kind of changes that we are witnessing. There is a possibility that so I don't think you have to take much. You should be concerned as much. In some cases, only in the cases where the fund is becoming too big, you have to take a decision. And still, in many categories, it may not be relevant. In some categories, the economies of scale will trigger in, and it could be advantageous. In some cases, some categories, big funds are better. But as I said earlier in the discussion, that in some categories you have to be concerned. Too big a fund in categories where it becomes a serious disadvantage, you have to worry. My advice to layman is that stay put. If you have chosen and this is where the simplicity of your investment approach really helps. If you have chosen too many small cap funds and now a lot of them are merging, and you should try and get you should be investing a bulk of your money should be invested in funds which are broader mandate, diversified fund, multi-caps, and you remember in all our discussion we have been trying to say that diversify nicely with as fewer fund as possible, and if you're following that approach, you will be least affected. Some cases you have to worry where the funds are becoming very big, or there is a change in attribute. Some of the balanced fund will become balanced advantage, so they will be very defensive oriented from here on, and in the past 10-15 years they have been very aggressive. They have almost like an equity fund. Moderate your expectations there, take a call, understand these things. The whole advantage of this whole exercise, the advantage of this whole exercise is that when you invest in a fund, that fund will retain its character all through.
So can we say it is streamlining things?
It is a streamlining thing.
Yes. Okay, and also when we say to our investors, you should be cautious, when the fundamental attribute is getting changed, what should he be doing then? If in case the fundamental attribute has changed, then get out immediately and...
No.
Then what
because one is that I have seen most of the changes. In case of fixed income fund, investors don't have much, individual investors don't have much investments in fixed income fund, but they will also become more clearer.
Okay.
I think most investors should be more, conservatively inclined on those categories. Don't get into those exotic categories. Equity category and hybrids, I don't think you have to worry much, because most of the rejig has happened in a very nominal way, in a very small incremental way. Very few cases where I see that there's a big change. 2 notches up, something which was down there becoming one on the scale of risk. Otherwise, I don't see that investors should panic and worry about this. And there is absolutely nothing, and I think the streamlining of the hybrid categories will prove to be very useful for investors, because it just came from nowhere. Balanced funds were actually aggressively hybrid funds, or the equity income fund, the innovation in recent categories, or the balanced advantage fund, which came from which happened in 2-3 years, which gave you the tax efficiency. It has actually brought on forefront that don't be guided by taxes. Be guided by your goals, be guided by your risk tolerance, be guided by the riskiness of the fund.
Okay, and this process of classification, is it over, or is it ongoing? Is this work in progress?
It is work in progress. Okay. Some part of it is over. Some funds have changed their name.
Okay.
The merger initiative is on. Most of them have made the announcement of all the changes that will happen, but there is an effective date from when it will happen.
Okay.
So on one day you will see your account statement. So even on Value Research Online now you will be witnessing where there is a change of name. We put the new name, and then underneath that we see erstwhile this fund, because funds are also consumer brands in a certain way.
Absolutely.
People have been investing for many years, and then suddenly you realize that the fund that you're investing in is not that one. So we are tagging the old name alongside the new name for people to relate to them, for better understanding.
Okay, KM Nagendra has written in saying, how will grandfathering apply in case of merged funds? Will it be better to redeem units older than 1 year and pay 10% LTCG tax?
Oh, there is absolute grandfathering of all because 2 years ago the union budget made a provision that merger of funds, your date of investments will be considered, your initial date of investment will be considered as your date of investments. Okay. So if your investments are more than 1 year old, your cutoff date is not the date of merger. Your starting date is the date of your original investment. So if you invested 5 years ago, all your investments will be treated as an investment made 5 years ago. Everything will be, and up to January 2018, all the gains will be tax-free on equity funds or hybrid funds which are equity oriented. And so there is no grandfathering. All your initial date, so it is grandfathered in a way. Yeah.
Okay, Arun has written in saying that what will happen to my existing investment when the name or fundamental attribute of the fund changes? Will the units get transferred automatically?
No, the transfer is not happening. The name changes, the fundamental attribute changes, and you are given a choice that if you don't like these changes, you can walk out, and you can walk out without any exit load. That's about it. If you choose to stay there, nothing changes. The name changes, the attribute changes, and your investment continues.
Okay. And Ajoy says that I have invested in a dynamic fund, which is now changing to a multi-asset allocation fund. What should I do?
I would say that don't get bothered about this, because this is the dynamic equity funds were almost like multi-asset allocation, multi-allocation.
It's cosmetic in nature.
It is cosmetic in nature. Dynamic funds had the provision to invest up to 35% into fixed income. They also used to go up to 40-45% through arbitrage positions. So in that sense, it is cosmetic. The name is changing. This is a new category which has come about in the classification. Dynamic funds getting slotted there, you should not worry.
Okay. Arjun has written in saying that there is a thin line separating the large and mid-cap category and the multi-cap category in the new classification. Which of the two shall be preferred?
No, it is actually not a thin line. It is the intent, because I have been part of the devising of all these categories, so it is not a thin line. A multi-cap fund can actually invest anywhere. It is a go anywhere without any internal ceiling. So a multi-cap fund can well be a small cap fund at a certain time, and can be a large cap fund at a certain time, and can be a completely mid-cap fund at a certain time. So that is what a multi-cap fund is. It is go anywhere, tilt anywhere, do anything fund.
Okay.
A large and mid-cap fund is going to be 60% into large cap, 40% into mid-cap, and nothing else. So in that sense, but the design of it, the way we see it right now, the way you see many of the multi-cap funds now, we don't see much of a difference between. But these between the large and mid-cap fund and the multi-cap funds today, by their own nomenclature and design, things are going to get sharpened. Things will get articulated here. In fund companies will have to comply with this, and so that's it. The intention is, there is a clear differentiator in the minds of regulators while devising this category, and I think rightly so. If you are actually entrusting your money to a wise fund manager, choose the multi-cap fund.
Okay.
You give him all the freedom.
Right. So Arjun, I hope your query is taken care of. Nyasa says, does an investor get an option to exit from a mutual fund scheme without paying the exit load if the fundamental attribute of the fund is changed?
Yeah, even the not so fundamental attribute change is enabling you to exit without an exit load.
You've been saying
so
this.
Most fund companies are providing you a window to exit without any exit load during the period.
Okay. And Anup has written in saying that I'm salaried and my EPF is deducted every month. I also invest an equivalent amount in a multi-cap fund. Do I need to invest in debt?
No. I think, your EPF, which is a mandatory deduction, let it accumulate to a point. I would suggest that, think of your asset allocation holistically. Maybe there will be a point when moving a part of your EPF, if your EPF accumulation is a sizable one, you have to really consider that, is it a wise thing to have that larger allocation for the long term in EPF?
Okay. Debraj writes, after new classification, will a mid-cap fund invest only in mid-cap stocks, or is there a certain ratio mandated by SEBI?
By and large, a mid-cap fund should be investing substantial part of the money in mid-cap stocks. So, but this by and large is applicable to all categories, because fund managers say even a large cap fund is supposed to invest 80% into large caps and remaining in not necessarily in large cap, because there could be because look at it's a dynamic situation. The price changes every day. Large cap companies turn into a mid cap. Right. Mid cap companies turn into a small cap, and so this kind of flexibility is needed. But the answer to your question is by and large yes, but they also have the flexibility.
Okay. BK Chaturvedi says, can I switch from regular to direct option of a fund whose subscription is currently closed?
No, in fact, direct to regular to direct is amounts to redeeming a fund and buying one, and if the subscription is closed, you can take your money out. There are funds where new sales are closed. It is the fund is closed for new subscription, but so you can't invest, but you can take your money out. Okay. So you can't do that, because you can take your money out but you can't invest. Also, in case of, had it been a different thing, that dividend to growth also amounts to redemption of your money and moving to and investing again, or moving your money from the dividend plan to the growth plan, that will also amount to that. So in case of funds where the subscription is closed, you can't.
Okay. Last question. Sandeep says, I'm 60 years old and I have invested in an equity-oriented and a debt-oriented balanced fund. Can I start SWP from the first year itself? Will it be tax efficient?
Yes, after the first year, if you do it, then it will be very tax efficient. In fact, it is tax efficient always by very design, because in case of mutual fund, you will be redeeming units. So you will be liable for capital gains tax only on the limited amount of units which you will be redeeming. So if you take all the gains in the form of redemption of units, then it is very tax efficient, because the remaining money stays there, and only a nominal capital gains tax will be levied on the applicable.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dhuren, for taking care of all the queries that our viewers had sent in and throwing light on the new fund classification system mandated by SEBI. Continue to invest, and it's time for us to sign off. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.